Hello, sweet souls. Welcome back to Soul Love. Welcome if it's your first time here. In this space, I dive deep into the twin flame phenomenon without shying away from the real truths of the journey and discussing it in all its complexity and nuance. And in today's video, I feel called to build on what I discussed in my previous video, and I'll leave that linked below in case you haven't watched that, around the false light hijack of the twin flame label and some of the false narratives that have been put forth within the twin flame community and for the wider collective as well, that happen to be really detrimental to those of us who are really on this journey, because it keeps us from really getting to the essence of what it means to be a twin. And so in this particular video, I'm going to address one of the biggest purposes of twins on Earth right now, which is to assist the collective in moving out of 3D templates of relationships and into 5D love. So firstly, I do want to point out one of the narratives that I didn't really go into much detail on in the previous video, but that is very pervasive within the twin flame community and is also one of the main reasons why people tend to get stuck on the journey and loop in longing and in chasing and wanting this external validation and becoming dependent on outside perspectives, let's say. And that narrative is usually put forth by tarot readers and coaches that tend to focus a lot on getting the divine masculine or the matrix twin, the 3D twin back, or focus on what they're doing a lot. And they feed on the addictive energy and the fear-based energy that gets activated on the journey, especially in those initial stages of separation, of the separation phase. And as I was saying in the previous video, it's very important to develop spiritual discernment, spiritual maturity, and spiritual sovereignty so that we can understand that it isn't about the extremes. It's really about learning how to hold nuance, learning how to hold paradox. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wondering what the journey is like for your counterpart. That's human and it's natural. What is or can be harmful is obsessing about them and placing all your attention, all your worthiness, all your energy on them as the source of your fulfillment in life. So as I was saying, it's usually not about the behavior or the questions themselves, but rather about the energy behind them. And in order to truly understand what's behind a certain question or a certain behavior, we have to learn how to discern and how to come into our own inner authority. So you may be asking a question about how your counterpart is processing a certain aspect or emotion or wound from a place of sovereignty or from a place of grasping and clinging and ultimately avoidance of your own process. So that's in part why it's not helpful to subscribe to this type of narrative and to become dependent or addicted to having outside sources tell us what's happening. Does that mean, again, nuance? Does that mean that it's always wrong to seek out assistance or insight from psychics? Or is it absolutely wrong to get tarot readings? No, it's not. It's not the modality or even seeking out guidance that's wrong in and of itself, per se. It's how the energy behind it may be feeding your own disempowerment. And that will also depend on who the tarot reader or the psychic or the coach is and their intentions. And that's why, again, developing spiritual discernment is so important on this journey, so we can see through the hijacking that's happened and that's occurred within the community and outside of it, and the distortion, basically, of the twin flame journey, the label, the concept. So in order to help bring more truth, more depth, more clarity, more insight into part of what it really means to be a twin and what we're really doing here, I want to discuss in this specific video how we are helping, assisting the collective to redesign and usher in new templates for relationships and partnerships. And before I dive deep into that, I just wanted to add that all of us have unique missions, purposes here on earth that may not necessarily be specifically related to relationship templates. We will have individual missions of all kinds. And those are determined by our soul blueprint, our soul history, etc., our soul origins, our unique abilities and gifts and experience. However, one aspect of the mission or the purpose of twin flames in general, and this will apply to all of us, is that because of the nature of this type of awakening, because it involves two people, it involves two counterparts, part of the mission and the purpose, like I was saying, is to help humanity to clear those old paradigm templates of 3D relationships and bring us into a level of 5D unconditional love in form, in practice, in how we relate to one another. So in order to understand why, how that's happening, let's first take a look at what relationships have looked like so far here on Earth post fall of Atlantis. So mostly humanity has been operating on a 3D level of consciousness, as you may already know, and that's been reflected in the relationship templates that we've had running here for thousands of years. And what that looks like in practice is conditionality, a sense of transaction, so a transactional nature to relationships, as well as a sense of expectation. And that's all fed through separation consciousness. So this has happened to varying degrees, and even healthy relationships, or relationships that we would consider healthy from the old standpoint, from the old paradigm's perspective, can still be boiled down to some level of condition. And I'm going to give you examples of this. Let's say at the most transactional level, a relationship between two people, and here I'm talking about a romantic partnership, but it doesn't have to be, would have been based on what one party can provide for the other, and that would be, let's say, security, finances, safety, structure. And the other party would provide sexual intimacy, the ability to birth children. That's on the most basic level. And we also saw that in aristocratic times, where people would get married to strengthen alliances, for political reasons. So you can see that transactional nature I give you this and you give me that in return. And when it comes to even healthy relationships, we can still see remnants of that pattern, of that template. Because, for example, I might offer you support, validation, nurture, and you may offer me the feeling or the gift of seeing me, for example, of making me feel loved, of making me feel supported. And although there is nothing wrong per se in that type of exchange, there is still a level of condition imposed in that type of dynamic. So I love you and I stay with you because you make me feel seen, because you make me feel loved. And as we're moving into 5D relationships, and in fact, part of why the twin flame journey is so brutal is because not even that can remain. And I'm going to explain why. Because 5D love and above, unconditional love, is exactly what it sounds like, unconditional. No matter what. That means no expectations whatsoever that the other person is going to behave in any given way towards us. And here's where nuance and maturity really is necessary to understand what this really means in practice without falling into distortion. Because and understanding why part of this is collapsing separation consciousness. Because the fact that you love somebody unconditionally doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. It doesn't mean that you tolerate disrespect. But here's the thing. You can love someone unconditionally and not have them in your life physically. Is that still love? No, it's not. Pardon me. Of course it is. In fact, that's even deeper, truer love, because you don't need to have the person, you don't have the expectation that the person is going to behave in a respectful manner and stay with you physically. So you can see how this journey isn't about tolerating disrespect. It's not about a lack of boundaries, but it's also not about completely cutting somebody off. And that's why the journey is decided or designed, better said, exactly in this way. In the way that you cannot sever the connection, but you are forced to come into your own self-love, the embodiment of your sovereignty, your boundaries, because the love you have for yourself is the love you have for them. And you know their potential, you know how they're able to show up from a more conscious place, and you will welcome them when they can show up in that way. And until they cannot, you will not take less than what you deserve. So unconditional love transcends time and space. The fifth dimension is the dimension of no time, no space. So you let go of the expectation of ever having them in your life in the physical form, because you realize that there was no separation to begin with, because what is real is the love. It's the unconditional love that's based on no conditions. I don't need to keep you in my life. I don't need you to choose me, to validate me, to even value me in order to love you. And I don't need to override my own boundaries to love you. I can respect my boundaries and still love you and accept that I let you go. That's real love. I let you go. I set you free. I set you free to make the choices you want to make. I set you free to learn the lessons you need to learn. My love for you is unconditional, just as much as my love for myself is unconditional. And we reconcile that. So you can see why the journey is designed in this way that is so deeply painful. It's designed to bring out all our wounds, to the surface. All our conditioning, the ways in which we determined that our worthiness was dependent on them behaving a certain way, on them choosing us, on not being rejected, not being abandoned. And then they do exactly that. They do exactly those things that will trigger us the most to get us to heal those wounds within us so that we can come into that unconditional love and we can emancipate ourselves from needing them to fulfill us, from needing them to fill that void inside of ourselves. And only from that place can they truly, actually do their own work and return and come into that stable physical union with us that's anchored in the fifth dimension or above, where the other person comes back into our physical space from a place of no conditions. And then you can experience the purity, the divinity of love that doesn't bind, love that doesn't control, love that doesn't blame, love that doesn't chase. But it can only be done from a place of authenticity. And you cannot reach that place of authenticity if you don't actually heal your wounds enough to stop compromising your own integrity, to stop compromising your own self-love to keep them around. So I want to just give you a few examples of how this might show up in practice. So let's say you meet your twin, you meet your counterpart, and of course, eventually, sooner or later, you experience some sort of separation, if that's the case for you. And you have a very deep abandonment wound or betrayal wound because in your childhood or in past lives, your caretakers, your primary caretakers, your father, your mother, for example, kept telling you they wanted the best for you, they loved you, but then they would leave you hanging, for example. They wouldn't show up for you in those moments that mattered most to you, let's say. And that registered in your system as the wound of abandonment and betrayal. And then you meet your counterpart, and they come and they do the exact same thing. The journey is designed in this way so that you can feel your way through those emotions, honor your own anger, grief, feel your way through what was trapped back then, alchemize all that distortion and wounding into your power to start setting those boundaries and not accept that sort of treatment. And they do that specifically, unconsciously, if they are the 3D matrix twin, to get you to heal that wound of abandonment and betrayal. Stop projecting your need to be chosen, to be validated, to be seen onto them. Finally, come into a place where you don't abandon yourself, where you show up for yourself, you set those boundaries, you come into your own worthiness. You realize, I am worthy of being seen. I'm worthy of being valued. I don't need that. I don't cling to it. I don't have the expectation that somebody on the outside is going to do that for me. But I realize that I am worthy of it. And that's the type of love that I want in the physical form. And I don't want to have to behave a certain way or compromise or repress my emotions or repress what I really believe or what I really think to have them stick around and not abandon me, for example, or pretend I don't care, whatever it is, or chase and try to convince them. And you alchemize all that distortion, you heal that wound, and you come to a place finally of self-love, of sovereignty, and you stop expecting them to do that. And actually, that's how, as a, let's say, as a couple, let's say, as a partnership, you are helping each other heal from that wound and come into the vibrational frequency of unconditional love. So you give yourself what you are wanting that they give to you. You work your way through it until eventually you forgive them. You set those boundaries and you say, I love you unconditionally, but I don't want to be with a person that will abandon me and betray me. And I don't need you to do that or not do that in order to feel loved, because I feel loved. I am love itself. I remember that I am whole, that I am divine, that I am one with source and the cosmos. And as we do that, we purify our vessels, our nervous system, our whole being, and the planet, and our ancestral lineages from all this conditional type of love. And then at some point, they can come back in, and in that way, you anchor 5D unconditional love, when both of you can show up from a conscious place, a more aware place, a more healed place, where there's a choice to honor the truth, to honor love itself, but not because there's a transaction or there's any type of established exchange, but both outpour the love. The love overpours out of your heart because you fill your own cup so much that it extends to another in the physical form. And of course, that's only possible. You can only anchor that once you've cleared enough. And that's why the journey is designed. Part of the purpose is to bring all of that out so we can clear those old templates and usher in the new ones of unconditional love, where we can have the blessing of experiencing that type of divine love that is freedom, that doesn't attach, that doesn't cling, but rather honors, bows to, reveres. So I hope to have offered you some more wisdom and some more knowledge and some more insight specifically on what we're here to do as twins on this planet, and the beauty of this mission, and how we are actually helping to elevate and purify the templates for relationships here on Earth, and how it absolutely has nothing to do with feeding any type of obsession or clinging or control type dynamics where you want to grasp and you want to hold on to the other person no matter what. Nor is it about feeding the idea that this type of 5D connection is impossible to anchor into the physical form. That's exactly why we're here. If there ever was a time when it became possible, that time is now. So remember that you are worthy of this type of love, that it is possible, and that's part of why you've been awakened on this journey. Thank you so much for watching. If you are seeking any type of coaching, guidance, healing, if you want channeling as well from your higher self, soul alignment, don't hesitate to check out my offerings. They're all linked below. I also offer some quantum healing transmissions that might help you on your journey. Do like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. And just before I go, I do want to clarify that I said in the previous video that I can't offer personalized guidance and coaching in the comments section, but I don't want to discourage you from sharing your personal stories. This is absolutely a safe space to connect, to share our personal stories. I love reading about your own journeys and dynamics. I don't want to instill fear. It's more so that I can offer generalized responses. I can pick up on certain issues that might be good for future videos, upcoming videos, but I can't really dive deep into your specific case in the comments section. But that doesn't mean that you're not welcome to share your personal story I love to read that, and it absolutely helps others to feel connected, especially since there's so much loneliness on this journey at times, and we feel so misunderstood by the outside world, by those that are not on it. So do continue to share from that place. It is very much appreciated and valued and cherished. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I do wish you all the best on your journey. And I will see you very soon in the next video.